The sky burned orange and red as the alien ship fell through the clouds. It left a trail of black smoke behind it, spinning and tumbling like a broken toy thrown by an angry child. The people of New Haven looked up from their fields and homes, watching with fear and wonder as the vessel crashed into the wheat fields at the edge of their small colony. Commander felt his body slam against the control panel as his ship hit the ground. Warning lights flashed all around him. Alarms screamed in his ears. His 4 eyes tried to focus, but everything was blurry and dark. He could smell smoke and burning metal. He could taste blood in his mouth. He had done what needed to be done. The enemy fleet had come to destroy this human colony. 300 families lived here. Farmers, teachers, children, they had no weapons. They had no way to fight back. When the plasma blast came for their evacuation shuttle had put his ship in the way. He had taken the hit meant for them. Now he was dying. Was a species known across the galaxy for their strength and honor. His people stood nearly 8 feet tall. Their skin was covered in dark green scales that could stop a blade. They had 4 arms, 4 eyes, and hearts that beat with the fury of ancient warriors. For 200 years had served the Galactic Union. He had fought in dozens of battles. He had never known fear. But he knew it now, not fear of death. Death was an old friend to any warrior. No, he feared dying alone, so far from his own kind. His people needed something special to survive great wounds. They called it the tether bond. When it was hurt badly, they needed another nearby. They needed to feel the emotional connection of their own species. This connection helped their bodies heal. Without it, even the strongest warrior would fade away like a candle in the wind. Was the only in this sector. His nearest kin were light years away. The tether could not reach him here. He closed his eyes and waited for the end. Hours passed. He drifted in and out of darkness. Sometimes he heard voices, human voices. They sounded worried, scared. He wanted to tell them not to be afraid. The enemy was gone. He had made sure of that. But his mouth would not work. His body would not obey. When he finally opened his eyes again, he was no longer in his ship. He was lying on a soft bed inside a white tent. Medical equipment beeped and hummed around him. Strange lights scanned his body over and over. He saw figures moving nearby. Some were human, others were not. A tall creature with silver skin and 3 eyes leaned over him. Recognized the species. This was one of the best medical experts in the galaxy. Her name tag said Dr. L. "Commander," she said softly, "can you hear me?" He tried to speak, but only managed a weak groan. Dr. L looked at the data on her scanner. Her 3 eyes became sad. She turned to speak with her team but could still hear her words. "The damage is too great," she said. "His internal organs are failing. His neural pathways are shutting down. He needs a tether bond to survive, but there are no other within range. We can make him comfortable, but there is nothing more we can do. He will not last the night." The other medics nodded slowly. One of them, a human woman with kind eyes, wiped a tear from her cheek. They had all seen the battle. They knew this alien had saved hundreds of lives today, and now they could not save his. They gave him medicine to ease the pain. They covered him with a warm blanket. Then, one by one, they left the tent. They left him to die in peace. Outside the medical tent, the people of New Haven gathered in small groups. They spoke in hushed voices about the alien hero who had fallen from the sky. Everyone wanted to help, but no one knew how. The doctors had said it was impossible. The alien needed something humans could not give. Stood near the edge of the crowd, holding her son's hand. She was a young widow with tired eyes and a gentle heart. Her husband Ben had died 2 years ago in a mining accident, leaving her to raise their boy alone. Life had not been easy, but she had learned to keep going. She had learned to be strong. Her son Danny was 8 years old. He had brown hair that never stayed flat and eyes that were always full of questions. He was small for his age but brave in ways that surprised everyone. When the attack had started, Danny had not cried or screamed. He had held his mother's hand and trusted that somehow everything would be okay. Now he stared at the medical tent with a strange look on his face. "Mom," he said quietly, "that alien saved us. He saved everyone on our shuttle." Nodded, "Yes, honey, he did." "Then why are they leaving him alone?" Did not know what to say. She had heard the doctors talking. She knew the alien was beyond help. But how could she explain that to her child? How could she tell him that sometimes even heroes could not be saved? "The doctors did everything they could," she said finally. Sometimes there are things that even the best medicine cannot fix." Danny was quiet for a long moment. He watched the medical tent. He watched the people walking away. He watched the stars starting to appear in the darkening sky. "That's not right," he said softly. "He shouldn't be alone." Before could stop him, Danny pulled his hand free and ran toward the tent. She called after him, but he did not stop. He slipped past the guards who were not really paying attention. He pushed through the tent flap and disappeared inside. Started to follow, but something made her stop. She did not know why. Maybe it was the look she had seen in her son's eyes. Maybe it was a feeling deep in her heart that told her this moment was important. Whatever the reason, she stood outside the tent and waited. Inside, Danny looked at the dying alien for the first time. Was huge, even lying down. His scales were dark green, like the leaves of the old oak tree behind their farmhouse. His 4 eyes were closed and his breathing was slow and weak. He looked tired. He looked alone. Danny walked closer. He found a small crate near the bed and climbed onto it so he could see better. For a long time he just watched the alien breathe. In and out, in and out. Each breath seemed harder than the last. Then Danny did something that would change everything. He reached out his small hand and took hold of the alien's massive clawed fingers. "Hey," he whispered, "my name is Danny. I just wanted to say thank you, and I wanted you to know that you're not alone." His eyes slowly opened. 4 golden eyes looked down at the tiny human child holding his hand. He did not understand why this small creature was here. He did not understand why he suddenly felt a tiny spark of warmth in his fatting heart. But for the first time since his ship had crashed, Commander did not feel alone. And somewhere deep inside him, something refused to give up. The night was cold and quiet. The 2 moons of New Haven hung low in the sky, casting pale light through the thin walls of the medical tent. Most of the colony had gone to sleep. The excitement of the day had tired everyone out. Guards stood at their posts with heavy eyes, thinking about their beds and their families. But inside the tent, Danny was wide awake. He had not let go of the alien's hand. His small fingers were wrapped around one of his massive claws. The alien's skin was rough and warm, like stones that had been sitting in the sun. Danny was not afraid. He did not know why, but being here felt right. It felt like exactly where he was supposed to be. Drifted between sleep and waking. His body was failing. He could feel it. His hearts were beating too slowly. His thoughts were becoming foggy. The darkness kept trying to pull him down into a place where there was no pain and no memory. But every time he started to slip away, he felt something. A small hand holding his. A quiet voice talking to him. A warmth that did not come from the blankets or the machines. Danny talked because he did not know what else to do. He told the alien about his life. About his mother and their little farmhouse at the edge of the colony. About the chickens they raised and the vegetables they grew. About school and his friends and the books he liked to read. He told about his father. "His name was Ben," Danny said softly. "He worked in the mines on the other side of the valley. He was really strong and really kind. He used to carry me on his shoulders and tell me stories about the stars." Danny's voice became smaller. 2 years ago there was an accident. The tunnel collapsed. They couldn't get him out in time. He was quiet for a moment. He could feel the alien's hand twitch slightly. Maybe was listening, maybe not, but Danny kept talking anyway. After Dad died, everything was really hard. Mom cried a lot. I tried to be brave for her, but sometimes at night I cried too. I missed him so much. I still miss him." Danny looked up at the alien's face. His four eyes were half open now, watching him with a strange expression. "I think that's why I came in here," Danny said. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone. And I know what it feels like when someone you love goes away and doesn't come back. I didn't want you to feel that way. Even if you're an alien, even if we just met, no one should have to be alone when they're scared." Heard the child's words. He understood them even though his translator was barely working. But more than the words, he felt something else. He felt the boy's emotions, his grief, his hope, his stubborn refusal to give up. Did not just communicate with words. They could sense emotional wavelengths. They could feel what others felt if the connection was strong enough. This was how the tether bond worked. This was how his people healed each other. But humans were supposed to be different. The scientists said humans had no emotional resonance field. They said humans were incompatible with bonding. They said it was impossible. Yet here was this small child and could feel him. Not clearly, not like he would feel another, but it was there. A faint signal, a tiny thread of light in the darkness. Tried to speak. His voice came out as a rough whisper, barely louder than the beeping machines. "Why do you stay?" Danny looked surprised. He had not expected the alien to talk, but he smiled a little and squeezed the clawed hand. "Because you saved us," Danny said simply. "You didn't have to. You could have run away, but you didn't. You put your ship in front of ours. You got hurt because you wanted to protect people you didn't even know." Danny's eyes were serious and honest. "My dad used to say that heroes are people who do scary things because they know it's right. He said real courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway." The boy took a deep breath. "You're a hero, and heroes shouldn't die alone." Felt something shift inside his chest. It was not a physical thing. It was deeper than that. It was like a door opening in a room that had been locked for a very long time. The warmth from the child's hand seemed to spread through his body, pushing back the cold shadow of death. He did not understand it. He did not know how this was possible, but he was too tired to question it. All he knew was that he did not want to let go. He did not want to lose this small, bright light that had found him in the darkness. "What is your name?" little one asked. "Danny, Danny." "Danny," the alien repeated the name slowly as if tasting it. "You are very brave, Danny." Danny grinned. "My mom says I'm stubborn." "Perhaps that is the same thing." They were quiet for a while after that. Danny did not talk as much. He was getting tired too, but he did not let go of his hand. He put his head down on the edge of the bed and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. Watched the sleeping child. He could feel the boy's heartbeat through their connected hands. It was fast and light, like the wings of a small bird. It was so different from his own slow, heavy pulse. But somehow the two rhythms began to match. Somehow the child's heartbeat seemed to pull at his own, urging it to keep going, to not give up. Outside, the tent had been waiting. She had tried to go inside several times, but each time she stopped at the entrance. She could hear her son's voice talking softly. She could hear the alien responding in broken whispers. Whatever was happening inside, she knew it was important. Finally, when the talking stopped, she quietly pushed open the tent flap and looked inside. What she saw made her heart ache in a way she had not felt since Ben died. Her little boy was asleep, his head resting on the alien's arm, his hand still holding the massive clawed fingers. The alien was awake, watching Danny with an expression that recognized. It was the look of someone who had been lost and had suddenly found something to hold on to. She wanted to take her son home. He needed sleep. He needed safety, but she could not bring herself to break this moment. Instead, found a chair in the corner of the tent. She sat down, wrapped her arms around herself, and kept watch over her son and the alien he refused to abandon. When morning came, the doctors would return. They would expect to find a body. They would find something very different. They would find a dying warrior who was no longer dying. And they would find a small human boy who had done the impossible simply by refusing to let go. Dr. L arrived at the medical tent just as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. She walked slowly, her silver skin glowing faintly in the early morning. Her 3 eyes were tired and sad. She had seen many patients die in her long career, but it never got easier. Last night, she had left a hero to die alone because there was nothing she could do to save him. Now she came to collect his body and prepare it for the funeral rites his people would want. She pushed open the tent flap and stepped inside. Then she stopped. Her 3 eyes went wide. Her mouth fell open. Commander was alive. Not just alive, but stable. His eyes were closed in peaceful sleep. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. The machines around him showed readings that made no sense at all. His hearts were beating stronger. His organs were healing. His neural pathways were rebuilding themselves. And there, curled up against his massive arm, was a small human child. Dr. L ran to her scanner and started checking the data. She checked it once. She checked it twice. She checked it 3 times. The readings were impossible. They went against everything she knew about biology. "This cannot be," she whispered to herself. "This simply cannot be." She called her team. Within minutes, the tent was full of doctors and scientists, all staring at the screens with shock on their faces. They whispered to each other in confused voices. They ran test after test. The results were always the same. Commander's neural tether had reformed. The tether bond was a special connection that needed to heal from serious injuries. It was an emotional link that only formed between members of their own species. Scientists had studied it for centuries. They knew exactly how it worked. They knew that only another could create this bond. But the scans showed something different. The scans showed that the tether had attached itself to the human child. Somehow, impossibly, the boy had become his healing anchor. One of the doctors, a young man named Greg Porter, shook his head in disbelief. "Humans don't have emotional resonance fields. Our brains don't work that way. How is this possible?" Dr. L stared at the child sleeping against the alien warrior. "I do not know, but the data does not lie. This child is keeping him alive." At that moment, woke up in her chair. She had been watching all night, and exhaustion had finally caught up with her. She saw the doctors gathered around her son and felt panic rise in her chest. "What's going on? Is Danny okay?" Dr. L turned to her with an expression that was part confusion and part wonder. "Your son is fine, more than fine. Mrs., your son has done something that should be scientifically impossible. He has formed a healing bond with Commander. He is literally keeping this alien alive with his presence." Did not understand the science. She was a simple farmer, not a doctor, but she understood the look in the alien's eyes when she had seen him watching her son last night. She understood the way Danny had refused to leave, even when everyone told him there was no hope. "Danny has always been special," she said softly. "His father used to say that Danny feels things more deeply than most people, that his heart is bigger than his body." Dr. L considered this. Her species believed that emotions had power. They believed that strong feelings could change the physical world. Maybe there was something in humans that science had not yet learned to measure. Maybe this child had a gift that all their understanding. The noise in the tent woke Danny. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes with his free hand. His other hand was still holding his clawed fingers. He looked around at all the adults staring at him and felt confused. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. Rushed to his side and hugged him. "No, honey, you did something wonderful, something amazing." His eyes opened. For the first time since the crash, they were clear and focused. He looked at the boy who had stayed with him through the night. He felt the bond between them like a warm thread connecting their hearts. "Danny," he said, his voice stronger than before, "you saved my life." Danny smiled and shrugged like it was no big deal. "I just held your hand. Anyone could have done that." "No," said seriously, "not anyone, only you." The doctors wanted to separate them for tests. They wanted to understand how this bond worked. But the moment tried to take Danny away for breakfast, his vital signs dropped sharply. The machine started beeping warnings. His breathing became shallow again. Brought Danny back to the tent, and within seconds the readings returned to normal. It was clear now. The bond was real, and it needed both of them to stay close. Over the next few hours, word spread through New Haven and beyond. A human child had bonded with a warrior. A dying alien had been saved by the touch of a small boy. It was the kind of story that people wanted to hear. It gave them hope in a galaxy that often felt dark and cold. Messages came from everywhere. The colonial government wanted to know more. News stations wanted interviews. Scientists from distant universities requested permission to study the pair. Everyone wanted to understand how this miracle had happened. But the most important message came from the High Council. They were a proud and ancient species. They had clear rules about the tether bond. It was sacred to them. It was meant only for their own kind. The idea that a human, especially a human child, could form this bond was deeply troubling to some of them. The High Council sent word that they would send representatives to investigate. They wanted to see this bond for themselves. They wanted to decide what it meant for their people and their traditions. Received the message with a heavy heart. He knew his people well. He knew that some of them would not accept this bond. They would see it as wrong or unnatural. They might try to take him away from the child who had saved him. He looked at Danny, who was sitting beside his bed telling him about a book he had read about space pirates. The boy's eyes were bright with excitement. His hands moved as he talked, acting out the adventures of the characters. This child had given him a second chance at life. This child had reached across the impossible distance between their species and found a way to save him. Did not care what the High Council thought. He did not care what anyone thought. Danny was his tether now, and he would protect that bond with everything he had. Danny said, noticing the alien's serious expression, "Are you okay?" The warrior forced himself to relax. He did not want to worry the boy. "I am fine, little one. Tell me more about these space pirates." Danny grinned and continued his story. Outside the tent, the galaxy was watching. Questions were being asked. Debates were starting. History was being written. But inside the tent, there was only a boy and an alien, connected by something stronger than science could explain. Something that felt a lot like family. 3 weeks had passed since the night Danny first took his hand. In that time, everything had changed. The small farming colony of New Haven had become the center of attention for the entire galaxy. Ships arrived daily, bringing scientists, diplomats, and reporters from dozens of different worlds. Hotels were built almost overnight. The quiet fields were now filled with tents and temporary buildings. Everyone wanted to see the human child and the alien warrior who had formed the impossible bond. Grew stronger every day. His wounds were healing faster than any had ever healed before. The doctors said it was because of the bond. They said that Danny's emotional energy was like fuel for the alien's body. The more time they spent together, the stronger became. Danny tried to live his normal life, but normal was hard to find now. Cameras followed him everywhere. People asked him questions he did not know how to answer. Scientists put sensors on his head and asked him to think about different things while they watched their screens. Through it all, stayed close. The bond between them had grown into something neither of them fully understood. Danny could sometimes feel what was feeling. When the alien was worried or sad, Danny knew it even before said anything, and could sense when Danny was scared or upset. They were connected in a way that went deeper than words. watched her son with a mixture of pride and worry. She was proud of the kind and brave boy he had become, but she worried about what all this attention was doing to him. She worried about what would happen when the representatives arrived. That day came on a cold morning, in the middle of harvest season. The shuttle was massive and golden, covered in symbols that glowed with ancient light. It landed in the main square of New Haven, and three tall figures stepped out. They wore robes of deep red and carried themselves with the dignity of their ancient race. The leader was Ambassador Haz, a female with silver scales that sparkled in the sunlight. She was over 300 years old and had served on the High Council for half that time. Her 4 eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. Behind her walked 2 advisors, both male, both carrying traditional weapons at their sides. They were not here to fight, but the weapons were a reminder. They took their traditions very seriously. A crowd had gathered to watch the arrival. Among them stood Danny, and side by side, stood behind her son with her hand on his shoulder. She could feel him trembling slightly, but when she looked at his face, she saw determination, not fear. Ambassador has walked directly to. She stopped a few feet away and looked at him for a long moment. Then her gaze moved down to the small human boy beside him. "Commander," she said in the formal speech of their people, "you have served the Empire with honor for 2 centuries. You are a hero to our people, yet we receive word that you have formed a tether bond with this human child." Stood tall despite the lingering weakness in his body. "Ambassador, I understand your concern. I had the same doubts when I first woke to find this bond had formed, but I cannot deny what has happened. This child saved my life when no one else could." "The tether is sacred," one of the advisors said harshly. "It is not meant for lesser species." Danny felt anger rise in his chest. Lesser species. He did not fully understand what that meant, but he knew it was an insult. His 4 eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Watch your tongue. This child has more honor and courage than many I have known." The tension in the air was thick. The crowd held their breath. Ambassador has raised her hand for silence. "I did not come here to argue," she said calmly. "I came to see for myself. I have read the scientific reports. I have seen the data. But data cannot capture the truth of a bond. Only witnessing it can do that." She looked at Danny directly for the first time. Her 4 eyes studied him with intensity that made him want to look away. But he did not. He met her gaze and held it. "Why did you save him, human child?" she asked. "You did not know him, you owed him nothing. Why did you stay?" Danny thought about the question. He could feel nervousness through their bond. He could feel his mother's hand tightening on his shoulder. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. "Because he was alone," Danny said simply, "and because he saved us first. He put himself in danger to protect people he didn't know. He's a hero, and heroes shouldn't die alone." Ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Something shifted in her eyes, something that looked almost like respect. "You speak of honor," she said. "You understand it even at your young age. Perhaps there is more to humans than we believed." Over the next few days, the ambassador observed Danny and closely. She watched them eat meals together. She watched them walk through the fields talking about stars and dreams. She watched how Danny made laugh, a sound that few ever heard from the serious warrior. She saw the bond for what it truly was, not a mistake, not an accident, but something real and powerful and good. On the last day of her visit, Ambassador called a meeting in the town hall. Everyone gathered to hear what she would say. The advisors stood behind her with unreadable expressions. Danny stood with his mother on one side and on the other. The ambassador spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the room. "I have seen enough. The bond between Commander and this human child is genuine. It is not what we expected. It is not what our traditions prepared us for, but it is real." She paused and looked at. "Commander, the High Council has discussed this matter at length. They have decided to offer you a choice. You may return home to our people, where healers can try to transfer your tether to a proper host. Or you may stay here with the human child, knowing that by doing so, you step outside our traditional ways." The room was silent. Everyone waited for his answer. The warrior did not hesitate. He looked down at Danny, then back at the ambassador. Then, slowly and deliberately, he lowered himself to one knee. In culture, this position meant something important. It was the position of a guardian making a sacred oath. "I choose to stay," said clearly. "This child is my tether, but more than that, he is my partner. He is my family. I declare a kin bond between us in the old way, witnessed by you and all who are gathered here." Gasps echoed through the room. A kin bond was one of the highest honors I could give. It was a promise of eternal loyalty and protection. It had never been given to a non before. Ambassador has his eyes widened, then softened. She nodded slowly. "So be it. Let it be recorded that Commander has declared a kin bond with Danny of New Haven. May their bond bring honor to both their peoples." Danny did not fully understand what had just happened, but he understood the feeling that swelled in his chest as Rose and placed a massive hand on his shoulder. He understood that he had found something he thought he had lost forever when his father died. He had found a partner, a protector, a friend. He had found family. 5 years had passed since the day fell from the sky. 5 years since a small boy walked into a medical tent and changed everything. The galaxy had moved on to new stories and new wonders, but the bond between Danny and the warrior had only grown stronger. Danny was 13 now. He had grown taller, though he was still small compared to other boys his age. His brown hair was longer, often falling into his eyes in a way that annoyed his mother. His voice was starting to change, cracking at odd moments and making him blush. But his eyes were the same as they had always been, full of questions and dreams and a stubborn refusal to give up on anyone. He stood on the observation deck of the starship Endurance, watching the stars drift past the massive windows. The ship was a long-range explorer, one of the finest in the fleet. It carried scientists, diplomats, and families to the frontier colonies at the edge of known space. For the past 2 years, it had been Danny's home. Heavy footsteps approached behind him. Danny did not turn around. He did not need to. He could feel his presence through their bond before the alien even entered the room. "You should be sleeping, little one," said, his deep voice warm with affection. "We arrive at the station tomorrow. You will need your rest." Danny smiled but did not look away from the stars. "I'm not that little anymore." Moved to stand beside him, his massive form dwarfing the teenage boy. His scales had healed completely, leaving only faint scars from his old wounds. His 4 eyes reflected the starlight as he gazed out at the universe. "You will always be little to me," said. "Even when you are old and gray, you will still be the small child who held my hand and refused to let me die." Danny laughed softly. "Fair enough." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. This was one of their favorite things to do together, watching the stars, not talking, just being present with each other. The bond between them had matured over the years. It was no longer the desperate lifeline it had been in those first terrible hours. Now it was something gentler, a constant warmth in the back of their minds, a knowledge that no matter what happened, they would never truly be alone. Danny thought about how much his life had changed. After the kin bond ceremony, his family had become famous throughout the galaxy. Scientists had wanted to study them. Governments had wanted to use them as symbols of unity between species. News stations had followed their every move. But eventually, the attention had faded. New stories had taken its place, and the family had been able to build a new life. His mother had met a man named Sam, an engineer who worked on the Endurance. Sam was kind and patient and made laugh in ways Danny had not heard since his father died. They had gotten married last year in a small ceremony in the ship's garden dome. Danny had been the ring bearer and had stood as the official witness. It had been a good day. Danny liked Sam. He would never replace Ben, and he never tried to. But he made happy, and he treated Danny like a son. That was enough. "I spoke with the Academy today," Danny said, breaking the silence. "They accepted my application." Turned to look at him. Pride glowed in his 4 golden eyes. "The pilot program." "Yeah, I start basic training next month." Ever since he was a small boy, Danny had dreamed of becoming a pilot, of flying through the stars the way his father had talked about, of exploring new worlds and having adventures. Now that dream was finally coming true. "Your father would be proud," said. Danny felt the familiar ache in his chest that came whenever someone mentioned Ben, but it was not as sharp as it used to be. Time had softened the edges of his grief. The pain was still there, but it was wrapped in good memories now. Happy memories of a man who had loved him completely. "I hope so," Danny said. "I hope he's watching somewhere. I hope he knows I turned out okay." Placed his massive hand on Danny's shoulder. The weight of it was familiar and comforting. "He knows," the alien said with certainty. "A love like his does not end with death. It echoes through time. It shapes the people who carry it forward." Danny leaned against his partner's arm, the way he had done when he was 8 years old and scared and determined not to let a dying alien feel alone. "Yes, little one. Do you ever regret it, choosing to stay with us instead of going home?" The question had been in Danny's mind for years, but he had never been brave enough to ask it. Part of him was afraid of the answer, afraid that somewhere deep inside wished he had made a different choice. But did not hesitate. His 4 eyes softened with what Danny had learned was a smile. "I am home," he said simply. "You taught me that, Danny. You taught me that home is not a place. It is not a planet or a star system or an empire. Home is a person. Home is the ones you love. And you, little one, have been my home since the moment you took my hand and whispered for me to stay." Danny felt tears prick his eyes, but he blinked them back. He was 13 now, almost a man. He did not want to cry like a little kid, but saw anyway. The bond between them left no room for hiding. "It is not weakness to feel," the warrior said gently. "It is strength. It is the strength that saved my life, the strength that changed the way 2 species see each other. Never be ashamed of your heart, Danny. It is the greatest weapon you possess." They stood together as the stars wheeled past, 2 unlikely partners bound by something that science still struggled to explain. A human boy who had refused to let a stranger die alone. An alien warrior who had found a reason to keep living in the most unexpected place. Somewhere across the galaxy, other bonds were forming. Other connections were being made. The news of Danny and had inspired countless others to reach across the gaps between species, to find common ground, to see the person instead of the alien. The universe was still vast and dangerous. There were still wars and conflicts and misunderstandings, but there was also hope now. There was proof that even the most impossible distance could be bridged by something as simple as a hand held in the dark. A door opened behind them, and its voice called out, "Danny, dinner is ready. Sam made that pasta you both like." Danny grinned and looked up at his partner. "Race you to the dining hall." His eyes sparkled with amusement. "You know I will win." "Maybe, but I'll never stop trying." The alien laughed, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through Danny's bones. It was the sound of joy, the sound of family, the sound of home. They walked together toward the warmth and light of the ship's common area, where and Sam were waiting with food and laughter and love. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was smiling at the boy who had once whispered to a dying alien, "Stay with me, partner." Had stayed, and neither of them had ever been alone again.